My name's Gericules, and I'm going to talk today about building a stronger and bigger back. I had deadlift nearly 700 pounds, and as you can see from some of my other videos, that I have a very big back. Okay, and that comes from a lot of good back exercises. And the four back muscles you need to be concerned with are basically the traps, which are up here, and they go extend further down. So you got your lower, your middle, and your upper trap. You got your lats, here on the side. So they're here on the side, and then you have the rear delts, which are over your shoulders, over in the back of your shoulders. Those are the major muscle groups. Then there's some other minor muscles, which is why you need to do one overall exercise that hits all those muscle groups, which is the deadlift. So we'll talk about the four basic exercises you need to do to build a stronger and bigger back. Whether you're over 50 or whether you're a beginner, if you're an intermediate or if you're an advanced lifter, you already know how to do it, so I'm not going to be talking to you, though you might pick up a tip. So the first exercise I want to talk to is the deadlift. And so understanding the best way to do the deadlift so you minimize hurting yourself, especially if you're over 50, is key. So the first thing with the deadlift is the stance. What's the stance you take? Well, there's a sumo, which is the wide, and then there's a traditional deadlift where you bring your legs in, and it's probably they're anywhere from 8 to 12 inches apart. The one that builds more back muscle is actually the one with the stances closer in. The reason being is that really focuses more on your back, where if you do the sumo, it's a little more focused on the legs, so it's not going to be as efficient at building the back. Now, some people are going to be able to lift more doing sumo. It depends on your particular body type. Longer armed people tend to do a little better. So I'm not saying don't do sumo. If that's where your strength is and that's where you want to go ahead. But you're going to build more muscle overall doing the traditional deadlift, which is a narrower stance. So that's one. Two is, how do you hold the bar? Well, you can hold it overhand like this, alternative grip, so that you have more, it does not fall out your hands. So you can, one hand's up and the other hand's down, and you grab it like that, and that way it really stays in your hand pretty well. There are some other techniques, but I think you should only worry about those two, especially if you're a beginner over 50, because some of the others can involve injury to your thumb, or some other injuries. So the safest ones are either the two overhead or two over the bar, and alternating one under the bar and one over the bar. The problem with the stronger grip one is when you do the lift, the bar will drift forward. And I did that forever. The bar would just drift forward. And so how I got around it was using straps and going to two overhead, and the bar would stay close to me. How do you know whether it's if it's drifting? So if you do the alternate hand grip, and you lift it, and there's no your shin hasn't taken any rubbing, you notice no chafing down there at all, then it's gone too far out. When you do a proper deadlift, you should be touching your shins, not scratching them. That's why they wear socks, but typically you're just touching them on the way up, and so you'll see some rubbing marks on your legs. And if you don't see those, that means your bar drifts too far forward. And the problem with that is every inch it drifts out gets very heavy. And so think about a bar way out here. It's very difficult to lift even 100 pounds. So you want to bring it as close as you can to your body, and that's why I recommend two overhand grip. Though I have to use, for heavy weights, I have to use some sort of strap, and that's not allowed in competition. So if I compete, I can't use it. But clearly, when you're a beginner or over 50, that's not that critical. So that's the stance. That's the how you hold it. I do want to say that one of the issues is not. I'll talk about reps and how many you should do, but the issue is with heavy weights, especially with deadlift and even bench and squat. You need to take rest between the sets. Typically, you do a set of anywhere from 3 to 7 to 8 reps, and then you need to take a couple minute rest, 2 to 3 minute rest, and that's standard for a power lifter or someone trying to gain strength. If you want to go through faster, yes, you'll burn up more calories, but you're not going to be as efficient at building weight, building strength or muscle mass. So I do make sure that in a deadlift session, you're spending at least 20 minutes doing 5 sets of 5 reps. What should you start off with? Well, as a rule of thumb, I mean, it varies from person to person, but here's a rule of thumb you should follow. You should do half. You start with the first set should be half your weight or 135 pounds, whichever is less. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you're going to start off with 50, which is the bar, and 2 small weights the side. Actually, I would always always use the big plates. So there are 10-pound big plates that are the same radius of the 45-pound plates. So that way you'll practice the proper, because if you do the 5-pound plates, they're like this big, and you're going to be really close to the floor, and you don't need to be that close to the floor. So you always want to use the radius. Make sure the bar is off the ground like it would be if you put a 45-pound weight on. So it doesn't matter after you ensure it's that height on the first weight. It doesn't matter after that. So you're going to have either start with half your weight or 135, which is ever less. You're going to do 5 to 8 reps of that, just to get the blood flowing through that and making sure you got good blood pump. Then, depending how you felt on that one, if you felt really good, I would increase it 20%. So if you had, let's say, 100 on, you go up 20 pounds. So it'd be 120. And then I would do 5 more and see how you feel. If you feel real good, you add 20% more, and you get up to about 144 pounds. That, and it doesn't have to be exact. So you're around 144, 145 pounds. And you do 5 reps of that. And then if that is not difficult, you go up 20% again, and you do that until your 5th set. If it is difficult and it starting to feel heavy, then just go up 10%. If it feels really heavy, just stay where you are and do the rest of your sets with that weight. Okay, so basically, if you're really strong, you start at 100 pounds, you probably wind up your 5th set about 225 pounds. And you do that for 5 reps. Then the following week, if you could do that last 5th rep, on the 5th set, you could do that 5th rep without significant strain, I'd add another 5% of the weight to the bar the following week. So you start with 100 this week, next week you start with 105, and you do the same thing. You go up 20% if it felt good. If not, it didn't feel so good, you only go up 10%. If it really felt super heavy, you just stay there and you do the 5 sets. So that's sort of the overall how I approach deadlift, and I think that's how you as a beginner or over 50 should approach deadlift. And that's the safest, easiest, and most effective way to gain mass from deadlifting on your back. And also deadlift does help your legs as well. Now, if you want to be strong, I would suggest if you're a beginner or over 50, a good goal is 2 times your weight. So if you weigh 200, you should be deadlifting 400, and that's a good goal. Whether you want to go past that or not is really up to you. But if you can get twice your weight, you're doing good. Especially if you're over 50, if you hit twice your weight, you're in a really good zone. You don't really need over 50 to go much beyond that, because as I've been saying in my other videos, too much muscle is not necessarily a good thing when you're over 50. But it can be a bad thing. So I always have to watch to make sure I'm not getting too big. I know that sounds weird, but it's true. You start having all sorts of issues when you're too big. even if it's muscle. So, doing twice your weight is a really good goal for over 50 or for a beginner. That's sort of the deadlift. Now, to support, not only these other exercises will help your deadlift as well. So you want an exercise after you do the deadlift. You can always do your heavy sets first. Then you're going to work on one that hits traps. You're going to work on one that hits the rear deltoid. And you're going to work on one that hits the lats. Now, some of these overlap, and some of them do better in one than the other. But in general, these 3 exercises I'm going to recommend that you do will hit all those 3 pretty well. So the first one is lats, and how I would approach the lats is I would do bent over rows. Those are really good for not only the lats, but they hit some of the rear deltoid, and they do hit some of the lower to mid trap. So I would do bent over rows, and basically bent over row is where you bend over and you take the barbell or dumbbell and you pull it up to your waist. And you put it back down, you pull it up, you put it down, you start off on the ground. It comes off the ground so after you deadlift, you just leave the first plate on, basically, and you do rows. If that's too heavy, then go down to, again, half your weight, and start there. And so with each of these, each of these accessory exercises, I recommend you only do 3 sets of 5 to 8 reps, and they'll depend upon how heavy and how much you struggle, how many reps you do. But when you do 3 sets, the first set should be light. The second set should be about 50% of your max, how much you could lift on that particular lift. So if my bent over row was 200 pounds, that was my max, I'd be doing 100 on the second one. And then on the third one, you do about 80%. So I'd be doing 160 on the third set. If you do the bent over row, you then do heavy shrugs. Now, I would do, if you can do more in the shrug than you can the bent over row, maybe you do the shrug first and the bent over second. The reason I do the bent over row first is because the weight's already set up, right? So it's on the bench, it's on the deadlift platform, the bar's down there, and I'm just picking it up. So I haven't really changed much. When I go do the heavy shrugs, I have to usually use dumbbells or a machine, so I have to go somewhere else. So the next one would be the heavy shrugs, and those probably are optimized by using dumbbells, heavy dumbbells. And again, there I'd be, start off with, whatever a lightweight, whatever you consider lightweight, and make sure you do a complete upward rotating your shoulders, slight rotation your shoulders, go up as far as you can, and do that about 8 times. And the reason you're doing it more is because it's harder to break that muscle down. And that'll get the top, the middle, and somewhat the lower trap. And that's, so you see that bigger neck, which is important. If you're going to build a back, you at least need some neck. And I don't think I have a lot of neck, but I got enough that I think it looks good. So that's the one you want to do for your traps. And then the final one is you either want to do a pull up on a bar, and you want to do probably 8 to 10, so you do 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps, or you can do go to a bar and do a pull down. So you do a pull down in front, and it gets the lat, gets some of the lower trap, so that's a good exercise for that, and it also gives you a good V shape, especially if you do the pull-ups. And the pull-ups also, I think they help to provide some sort of, unless you start going heavy, you might want to go to the machine and use a pull-down bar. But until you go heavy as a beginner or over 50, I would do 8 to 10 pull-ups, 3 sets of 8 to 10 pull-ups with your body weight. And if you can't do your body weight, then there are machines that you can get on, and it lessens the weight. So it takes some of the weight off by you putting the foot on a lever or on a pedal, and it allows it to absorb some of the weight. So you only have to pull however much you dictate to it. So you might want to use that, or you might want to do the pull down bar. But once you get strong enough, I do recommend you do the pull ups directly on the bar.